Here we go. So, welcome Maurice Allen to the next week's Life podcast. We're thrilled, honored to have you. We've come to know you a little bit the last few months, and you've got a great story to tell. And for the audience, I'd like to give a shout out to Eric Aumann and High Tech for the introduction to Maurice. He's a great guy. And for the audience, we're really looking forward to having a good time with Maurice, talk about his history and his future and some of his aspirations. So, to all of you, I'm not going to waste much time with the intro. I'm going to let the man who's a champion. And I would say, how many of you people in the audience, how many of us in the audience have ever had the privilege or the honor of visiting with, meeting a true world champion? And not just one time, but more than once. So I'm thrilled to have you, Maurice, and I think that's a great way to start. How does it feel to be a world champion, knowing that you're better than anybody in the long drive contest at that moment in time?
Um, I don't know. I don't look at it that way, to be 100% honest with you. There are a lot of great competitors who will never win a world championship. I think the year that I won the world championship, I actually was not the best person in the world at that time when you look at consistency. The 3 years prior to that, I could have won, and I didn't. Those 3 years, I was definitely one of the best in the world, if not the best in the world, hands down for sure. I just proved it time and time again. In 2018, I actually had a terrible year up until that event. So I happened to put it together at that one particular time. I struggled that whole year with all kinds of stuff. Body was just tired and everything like that. But I mean, it's a cool thing to say that you're a world champion. It's a cool thing to win it. I don't think that it makes me any better than anybody else. I just look at it from a stance of, I mastered what I was doing at that particular time. And that's pretty cool to say that you've accomplished a goal, you've done it to the highest level. And then from there, it's, how much further can you push yourself? How much further can you push the sport or the discipline that you're in? How much more can you make it grow? It really becomes more of a responsibility, a very large responsibility than anything else after you do it.
So when you how did you get on the road to trying to even be a world championship long drive hitter or golfer? I mean, how did that happen for you, Maurice?
It's simple, but it's not simple. I'm a firm believer in faith and God, and that in order for my story to happen, a lot of pieces have to come together that as a human being, I don't think anyone's even capable of putting together in a script. I remember I was at Florida A&M University where I did my undergraduate degree. There was this girl who I was dating at the time, and there was a guest speaker in our class. And traditionally, your senior year in college, you get a guest speaker. You're not going to class. You're like, I'm done. I know where I'm going. And I remember telling her, I was like, all right, well, we're going to go somewhere and get some food. Do you want to come? She was like, oh, well, I left my book bag in the class. And there was a piece of me that was like, well, that's your problem, not mine. And she was like, are you really going to leave me in class by myself? Another piece of me was like, well, you should have planned better. But I was like, nah, I'll go in there with you. So I ended up sitting through this guest speaker with her, and I was answering a lot of questions. And it was a chiropractic school that brought the recruiter out. And the guy was telling me, he was like, man, you answered all the questions. Are you thinking about going to chiropractic school? I was like, no, I'm going to med school. I don't want anything to do with chiropractic school. I know where I'm going. And he was like, well, will you please just put in the application? We'll waive the application fee. I might be able to get you some money to go to school. I know you're not getting money to go to med school. And I ended up, honestly, I signed up, put the application in, got money to go to school. And then I ended up going to this school that I never heard about right outside of Atlanta. And through that process, they had a golf intramural team, a club. And you had $100 a year. You got to hit unlimited range balls at this range 2 miles down the street. And they were also trying to grow their sports program at the time. And a guy who was Coach Baird, he's dead now, but he was the athletic director. And he decided that he had some extra athletic money and he was going to fund me going to do long drive for that summer. He was like, anywhere you want to go, the school's going to pay for it. They're going to send you a chiropractor everywhere you go. And I ended up doing relatively well at the time. Broke a world record and all kinds of other stuff, brought some publicity to the school. And then I got kicked out of school for not going to class. But the president of the university literally told me, all right, well, I kicked you out of school because you're not going to class, not because your grades, because you're not going to class. But I'm going to fund you for the next quarter to go and participate. We'll still keep your scholarship and we'll let you just go do what you're doing. And from there, it just kind of took off. So, as a human being, I couldn't have never planned that. That's how I got into it. I didn't play college golf. I didn't play high school golf. I didn't play junior golf. My dad tried to get me to play as a kid, but it was just a lot of, I guess, self motivation and trying to figure out, could I become one of the best at this? And especially at that time, no one made a living doing it. There was no professional long driver. There was one, maybe two, but it was not an option to do this for a living when I first started.
So, sort of, Coach Baird was sort of a part of your destiny. He helped guide you, put you on the path.
Yeah, I mean, there were a lot of people. There was a guy, JR, who's a teaching pro there. Obviously, the president of the school at Life University, Dr. Reekman. I can go down the list of it. I mean, at that point, when I got kicked out of school, I also lost my housing. So I was sleeping in my car on campus in the parking garage or at Walmart, all kinds of stuff, man. But it was literally, if I didn't do all of those things, I wouldn't be where I am today. I know we live in a world where everybody wants to say positive vibes only, and if it's negative, get it away from me. But honestly, I don't know a successful person in this world who does not believe that the worst things that happen to them were actually the best things that happened to them. When you're going through it, it seems like it's negative, but the truth is, it's really preparing you for what's going to happen. And if you're so stuck on being in the positive realm of life and you don't want to see what is really going to put you to the test to see who you are as a human being, you'll never actually see how great you can be.
I'll tell you what, that's great perspective and good counsel for anyone in the audience. Anyone who hasn't really suffered in some way or another probably doesn't have the same appreciation for when you finally do see some light in the sky, right?
Yeah.
So I hear you. And let's go back a little bit to Maurice when he's 5 years old. So my understanding is you grew up somewhere outside of Orlando, if I'm not
Yep.
mistaken, right? So tell us a little bit how the big Maurice, who's a world championship winner, how did you start? Where was your life? Where did you
Uh,
begin in the road?
it was different, man. Every time I have this conversation, someone asks me this question, and it's the most. I hate the way it sounds because it sounds so arrogant. It sounds so cocky. It sounds completely different than what is the truth. But honestly, I had no choice, absolutely no single choice on this earth other than to be great. Being average was never going to be a possibility just because of the people that I was around, the things that they had to overcome, the things that they did. It was, the family, the people, everybody in my family and everybody that I was around have been very influential people in everything they did, whether it be the civil rights movement, the freedom riders, associates of Malcolm X, associates of Dr. King, associates of Fred Hampton, different sports legends. I mean, growing up, it was nothing for me to be around those types of individuals, and what that does is that gives me a different area to pull from and to learn from. Um, I wasn't in a position where I had to go and search for role models or people who I want to aspire to be like, or, it's kind of like old school lifestyles of the rich and famous. Everybody would look at that when that show was on and it was like, man, they've got an elevator in the house. Whoa, that's crazy. But you only saw it on that show versus today with Instagram, how everything is so closely connected. It's almost like you're the whole 6 degrees of separation. Everyone knows someone that's close like that. Well, for me, it was everywhere I turned. So I saw nothing but successful people. I saw nothing but great people, and I didn't have to go far to get advice. I didn't have to go far to see this is what I want to do, or this is the hard work it takes to become successful.
And how old were you when all that started to happen for you? When you had these kinds of influences?
Man, from the beginning, honestly. I don't know. Are you familiar with the movie Hidden Figures? About the
Yeah.
okay, so my mom
Yes.
worked for Catherine Global. My mom was a project engineer for NASA, and she was the project manager for every single shuttle mission that took place. So every time there was a payload inside the payload bay, my mother was the senior engineer responsible for those. So that was that. My dad was over the Orange County Convention Center for as long as I could ever remember, and so on and so forth. So it was never anything where I was looking at a situation trying to find people who I could look up to. They were consistently around me.
So your mother actually was far more important than you were with golf. Holy cow. She's responsible for payloads being delivered by NASA.
Yeah,
And you get to go home and talk to her about how her day was.
yeah.
Oh my God. Did she ever say anything to you that made you go, wow, that never ever occurred to me?
No, not, I mean, yeah, all the time. I mean, I think, when you look at things, it's different. Obviously, being one of the first women to be in the control room during the shuttle liftoffs, there's a lot of things that go on, especially being the first black woman in there. There's so many different things that she had to overcome. So that helped me along my way in my particular sport because in the sport of long drive, I was the only one as well. So, being able
Yeah.
to have those conversations, being able to relate, figure out, okay, well, what did you deal with versus what am I dealing with? Um, and how did you get past that? How did it make you feel? How did you find a way to still, because at the end of the day, whether it's athletics or in your profession, you still have to perform. You still have to do your job. Otherwise, you lose your job, regardless of the outside influences. So, finding a way to sort of keep your head when everyone else would be losing theirs is something I had to master. And I had a wide variety of people that I could talk to about that.
Incredible. That's an incredible chapter of your life. That's unbelievable. And you have brothers and sisters?
Yeah, yeah. So it's the same thing. I mean, it's all the same. Everybody's in the same boat. It's nothing. Competition is good. We live in a world where people are afraid of competition, but competition allows you to figure out where where you're weak more so than where you're strong. And if you have people who are stronger than you in certain areas, you find a way to, it's kind of like racing. You draft off of them, you pull from them to make yourself better. And then you become this super machine. And hopefully you do the exact same things to them. And that's exactly what happened. The whole entire pathway is just like one up, one up, one up, one up, one up, and you keep going. So it made it really, really interesting. That's for sure.
And how, if you don't mind my asking, how many brothers and sisters did you grow up with?
Two brothers, one sister.
And
And then
you
I have
are
a
in the
top on the top.
number one.
Yeah, but it's interesting. Then I have a lot of cousins who are always around as well, so that part was definitely different. And even that is still competition. I remember my cousin went to a neighbor in high school, and my brother was here, and like we used to just train and try to get each other faster, run faster, work harder. Even though we were eventually competing against each other because we're in the same meets running for two different schools, and so it was just one of those things. You just keep pushing.
So when you look back, and you mentioned some pretty powerful names there, Martin Luther King and Malcolm X and all those really big lifestyle changes in the country, and all good, right? I mean, look hopefully where we're going and where we are today. Do you continue to work in communities like that? Is that a big part of your life?
Yeah, for me, because the golf sector is the only place that I think hasn't changed. Even though people seem to try to think that it is, and within all honesty, it's not at all. So to be a voice for that, to be someone who's trying to promote change, and especially with a solid golf resume. It's different when you're somebody who's an outsider trying to tell people what they need to do to change it. But if you're a person who's actually lived it and has seen the discrimination firsthand, it's affected, your day to day, it's affected your bottom line, it's affected your profit, then you can go and speak to it from a stance of I've been in these shoes and you can't tell me anything different. And you don't go into it. I think a lot of times people fight these arguments with feelings. And while feelings are great, I can't prove or disprove feelings. All I can do is bring facts. And I think that's the one thing that I've learned over time. And especially the things that my parents taught me where, it's one thing to say that you feel something's a certain way. And a lot of times interpretation has a lot to do with it. And unless you know for a fact, unless you can absolutely prove it, even if you feel it, even if you know it's true, you know, you don't have a leg to stand on outside of whatever you can prove. And we see that a lot of times in the legal system. You can know that a person has committed a crime, but there's a loophole. I mean, we've seen that with the countless people that have been gunned down and shot and murdered with the police, and you see it outside of that as well. But even you can have people murdered on videotape and they can still get off, they can still get away. And it's like, how does this happen? And it still boils down to, are you leaving it without a shadow of doubt, without any reasonable doubt? And you have to be able to prove that when you're talking about moving things forward, because unfortunately, whether people like it or not, a large part of, I guess, the change of the climate in today's world, it's a power shift. So there are people who are in power who will ultimately lose power through, diversity and inclusion and equality. And if I have had power for so long, do I really want competition? I've gotten comfortable. I don't like competition. If I've done it for the last 35 years my way, there might be somebody out there who knows a whole lot easier and better, more efficient way of doing it, but this is my way. And instead of us working together, I'd rather not work with this person at all. And it's not necessarily race, it's just a lot of it is I don't want to lose my power. I don't want to lose the comfort that I have, and I don't want to challenge myself to get better. And that's where a lot of it comes into play.
Well, Maurice, that's a powerful message, and one that I think we should all really pay very close attention to. You're right; it is a shift, a major shift, and it's all good. We just have to learn how to manage that shift.
Yeah.
So I'm grateful you shared that with us. And along those lines, you're an influencer. So a podcast like this, or any number of other communications vehicles. So how can we help each other to continue down that path of mutually beneficial success for the world? I mean, what are your thoughts about that?
I mean, it's weird. The problem is there are no two people alike, and people change from day to day. From the time we start this podcast to the time this podcast ends, hopefully both of us would have changed for the positive. We would have grown. We would have had a better understanding of ideas and theories and perceptions, and two people's journey on this thing called life. And that's great, but it's constantly evolving. There's so many different variables. How do you find a way to deal with that? And when there's so many different people doing the same thing, in today's world where you're struggling, where there's a lot of economic struggle, people need to survive. Not necessarily thrive, but just basic survival first. And, so you've seen it on countless occasions. The fear of not surviving and the fear of losing money causes people to do some very strange things sometimes. And it's not always the best representation of who they are, or at least, no, it's always the best representation of who they are. It's just not the best representation of who they want to be or who they have the potential to be. And too many times we see people for their potential rather than who they are. And if you see people for who they actually are, you can help them gain their potential. But it's a very scary place to be that vulnerable in life with so many things going on and not knowing who to trust, not knowing who to turn. When you're vulnerable like that, you leave yourself open for invasion. And that's not necessarily the best place to be because you don't know the person's purpose. You don't know what their goal is, their end goal, and it's not always to help you. And that's where it gets really difficult.
Yeah, well, I completely understand, and that's a great message you're sending. It is difficult, and I like that. I like your use. I don't like why you did it, why you said it, but I like your use of the word invasion. So it's very clear. Your message is very clear. You know, it's interesting because guys like myself, we were talking about this a little while ago. You know, 71 years old. You know, I've seen a lot of decades, and you know, I've seen the good, the bad, everything in between. You know, the assassination of JFK to Martin Luther King to Vietnam to, I mean, a lot of really painful, you know, kinds of situations for the country and the world. And yet I have hope. You know, I wake up every morning thinking, whatever it was, we can change.
Hmm.
So, you know, I look at you and I'm thinking, your hope. You know, you deliver hope, man. Keep that message coming to everybody.
The thing I try to remember most about it, honestly, is everybody's fighting for the same thing. They just have a different way of getting to it. I don't know if you've ever seen the movie The Kingdom. It's one of my favorite movies. It's got Jamie Foxx in it and has a lady from Million Dollar Baby. And they're on this CIA operative team. There's this bombing in somewhere in the Middle East, and one of their guys is boots on the ground. It was actually a two bombing. One, they bombed the softball game to stage this huge search party, get all the first responders and everybody there. Then there was a second bombing, which was to wipe out the first responders. And they get the briefing here in the States, and it was one of these ladies' best friends, and he whispers in the lady's ear, Jamie Foxx does, we're gonna get them all. And then they go through this whole movie to find the person who's responsible, who was a Saudi guy, who was a terrorist, who was a bomb maker. And they rush into his apartment where his family's there. They end up shooting him. And his last dying breath is he tells his grandchild, "Don't worry, we're going to get them all." And it's funny how it's the exact same messaging that's being portrayed from both sides of the ball. It's just two completely different ways of going about it. And that's something that stems from ancient history. When people went and overtook different pieces of land. They took the civilizations that were there, and there was always this mass genocide that took place, and there was all this burning and destruction. Rather than saying, "Hey, you know something? You have something amazing. I have something amazing. Let's put our two amazing things together." And we could actually probably move the world forward, make things a lot better for a lot of people. And I think if people started looking at it that way, rather than thinking on either side of the ball, there's an invasion coming, be like, something, we're just two people with two different journeys, with two different thought processes. But the beauty of that is we can solve any puzzle or any problem that's out there because we're not necessarily looking at it through the same lens. So places where I get stuck, they won't, and places where they get stuck, I won't. But if we can find a way to communicate with each other, then we'll be able to solve any problem that comes our way.
Again, great message and perspective. And I didn't remember that movie until you mentioned the last line. That last line, I remembered the movie. And that was a powerful way to end that movie.
Hmm.
So thanks for sharing that again. And to move more to your future. I know that you are working hard, very hard, to pursue your professional career besides the professional long drive championships and so on. And I know you and I have spoken about this many times, and I think it's time to get the message out clearly to the audience. Maurice Allen is a great man and a great golfer and a great human being. And he's looking for a future in golf. And that requires not just the skill and passion, that he has to become a world-class golfer and continue down the path he's on. So to all my friends out there, the Sharp CEOs and Canon CEOs and Microsoft executives and all my friends and partners that have been working with me through the years, I'm going to say this for Maurice because I don't expect that he'll say it himself, But we need some help, man. We need to get some sponsorships for Maurice and what he's trying to achieve. So I would really appreciate it if you would visit YouTube, and he has a whole bunch of videos out there and social media that you're going to be thrilled with. In fact, I just watched one this morning, the 5 top, I think, shots that you made, which is, to the audience, you got to look that one up. It's fun. It's amazing. But in all seriousness, Maurice, you aspire to be one of the top professional golfers on the tour. So maybe you want to tell us a little bit more about your goals there and aspirations there.
Yeah, so for the most part, I've done everything that there is to do in long drive. And just like we were talking about, competition, trying to get better, moving forward. The next step for me, my game's grown significantly. I've started to shoot much lower scores. I won a tournament last week I shot 64. Trying to get to the level of playing on the tour. Go to the Corn Ferry Q School, go through that whole scenario, see how far I can really take this thing, and go out and play. I think I have all the tools that are necessary. It's just obviously not playing the game from the time I was 6 or 7. There's a lot of experience that I have to gain, and it's tournament experience, not just going out there and hitting balls on the range. I wish it were that easy, but it's not. And when you're in a tournament, there's a lot of things that pop up into your brain. There's a lot of insecurities that are uncovered. There's a lot of adrenaline that comes out of nowhere. So that part's actually pretty cool to see that part of the journey. But I try to play in as many events as I can humanly get into. There's some pretty big events that I would eventually have access to. So right now, just playing. The summer gets a little dead here because it's just so brutally hot. I think we had 116 index like 2 weeks ago, so no one's
Whoa.
yeah, no one's really playing too much there. But I prepare myself for the fall season, so that starts about late October and goes till about November. Then they have a good winter season here because the rest of the golfing world is kind of shut down. So really, really prepping myself. Finally got my equipment in order. Got all of that adjusted as it needed to be, got fit properly, and figured out the things that worked for me, which were not traditional as well. But started really, really putting it together and start shooting some really good numbers as of late.
So if any of the potential sponsors, of course, they can always reach out to me at any time, and the podcast, producers obviously help us with that as well. But if somebody wanted to reach out to you directly, Maurice, where would they reach you?
Simply, my email is just MauriceAllen360 at Gmail. Everything that you could ever find me on is connected to Maurice Allen 360, whether it be my website, my social media. I made it very uniform, so people don't have to think about all these different things. It was something I did years ago. I wanted to make sure if you looked up Maurice Allen 360, you were going to get me. So I put it in every platform that was out there. That's exactly what you get.
All right, so to the audience, you can find me, you can find the producers, you can certainly go to YouTube and Google up Maurice or just follow his directions here. So we have a series of events coming up, right? We have the Executive Connection Summit, which is going to be in January of 23, which obviously you graciously accepted our invitation to join us. So to the audience, you're going to have an opportunity to see, meet, listen to, engage with Maurice. Hopefully you'll be playing golf with him as well as we establish, the tournament rules and regulations the next few weeks, the protocol. But Maurice, I could tell you that every time I talk with you, I'm inspired. Every time I speak with you or I listen with you, you teach me something, and I'm grateful for that. And I hope if there, well, I shouldn't take the hope out of it. Your life's realities, the next year or so, there are a few things you need to achieve in order to make those goals, realizable, to be a success at what you're trying to do. So what would you tell the audience? What are those few things that you're really focused on that A, you need to personally improve, or B, you need the support of somebody to ensure that you can achieve those goals? So what would you tell the audience?
The first thing that I had to do was personal. It was me. It's not anyone else. I had to build up the confidence in knowing that I had the ability to do it. It wasn't anything else. I mean, I know a lot of as golfers, you hear them, they say, "Oh, I'm missing the money. If I had the money, I'd get there." And it's not something I believe. I look back at my long drive career and it was always about the confidence in believing in myself. Where if you look at any great 3-point shooter, you look at Reggie Miller, you look at Kobe, you look at Ray Allen, you look at Michael Jordan, you look at LeBron, they all wanted the ball with 2 seconds left. They didn't want to pass it, they didn't want to be the guy who dished it out. And so for me, that's the same mentality that I had to learn. And I'm still really, really focusing on getting better at it. I've gone 75, 80% of the way with that. But that was the first thing, knowing that, okay, I can hit this ball, I can keep it in play, I can hit the green, and then getting confident with my short game. Feeling if I've got a 40-foot putt that, oh, okay, I'm not going to sit here and say, okay, well, let me just get it close and save par. Can I get to a point where I really confidently believe that I can make this 40-footer? And I'm actually going to try to make it. I'm not going to submit to par. I'm really going to try to get the birdie. And then when you get the birdies, are you able to hold on to them? Or are you playing timid and scared? Your hands lock up? Does your heart start racing? Those are the things that I really had to learn. Those are the things that I've been working on the most, because once you start getting them, once you break that threshold of saying, you know what, I can shoot under par, I can go low, I can get 8 or 9 birdies in a round. Oh, eagle opportunities are no different than birdie opportunities, no different than par, and no different than bogey. They're all still a putt. And stop letting the severity of what it means have this greater pressure than the fact that it's a 4, 5, 6, 8, 12 foot putt. That was the first thing that I need to work on. And then the next thing is just getting to more events, playing in more events, literally putting up a full season of golf and saying, okay, I'm going to go to any and every event that I can go to for the next 12 months, 8 months, 9 months, and go out there, shoot some numbers, and make sure that I'm exactly where I believe I am going to be. That it's literally that simple. There's not a lot of fluff in it. I know a lot of people look at excuses and they try to say, "Oh, it's the equipment, it's this, it's that, it's the weather, it's," and the truth is, it's you. Because there's somebody who wins every week at every event. There's somebody who's making it, and there's nothing that's that special about you other than the fact that you get in the way to see how special you really are.
Man, that is such a great quote. It's just another putt. The severity of it, that's something we all have to deal with, right? But it's just another putt. I like that. I mean, that's great for just in life, right?
Yeah.
Just another day, fix it.
I mean, think about it.
So,
If I asked you, okay, what's your name? You're going to say Mike. All right. You want to bet $1 million on it? Then you start looking and you get real weird. Like, why does he want to bet me 1 million? It doesn't matter. The stakes are irrelevant. The question's still the
yeah,
same. The answer's still the same. There's no trick. And I mean, I think as people, we're always looking for something to go wrong. We're like, oh, if it's the whole thought of, you're taught from a kid, if it's too good to be true, it probably is. Sometimes that's not the case. Sometimes you just have to enjoy what's directly in front of you and take it at face value. And that's the biggest thing I see in golf is, you're starting to get on a heater. You go 3, 4 under par, and you're like, all right, well, here's this hole. I always go bogey here. I'm just waiting on it to mess up. Why are you waiting on it to mess up? Just enjoy what's directly in front of you, and go out there and just rip the course apart and just take it for what it is right then and there. Enjoy that moment, love that moment, live in that moment.
man, I'm with you on that. That's almost a great way to end this segment. But I did have two more things I wanted to ask you. One was the Niagara Falls. Could you tell the audience about what that was? I mean, I watched that video and it's like, what on earth? There's no way. So tell us what happened. What was going through your mind with that one?
Honestly, it was not my idea. Scratch the media source for the PGA Tour. It was their idea. I had done some stuff with them in 2018, winning the world championship. We did this whole Avis deal after that, and it was, is it drivable? And that was the whole concept that we were doing. And they approached me about it. And To be honest with you, I didn't even know John Daly tried it at the time when they told me. I did some research and I saw that he tried it. And I remember I was like, ah, yeah, we could do something like that. And I didn't pay much attention to it. I kind of brushed it off. And I didn't think it was something that they were really going to do. And they came back a couple of weeks later and it's like, all right, we got the date set. And they gave me about 8 weeks. And so I went and I trained hard because I didn't know what I was going to experience. I know I had been to Niagara Falls twice because there used to be a long drive event in Canada, and I'd been there a couple of times, so I'd seen the falls. But it never dawned on me to think about trying to hit a ball across. That just wasn't it. And we got there the first day. It was a mess. I mean, the wind, the rain, it was spitting. It was just, it wasn't safe. Then the second day, we first got there, it was absolutely perfect. It was downwind, crystal clear skies. Everything was great about it. I was like, oh man, okay. I wasn't cocky, but I was like, okay, if there's ever a time I can hit it, right now is the time. And the crane, there was a guy with the camera behind us in the crane, and the crane got stuck. And so it was a safety issue. It took them about an hour and a half to fix the crane, get him down, make sure the crane was operational. And then by the time they got it up and said, all right, we're ready to go, it started raining and the wind shifted in my face. And then the fog from the mist from the falls came across because the wind shifted. So now I can't see the other side. And I was like, you got to be kidding me, right? And, here we go with an excuse, right? I'm like, well, it's an excuse. If I don't make it, I can always say it was into the wind and this was going on. But yeah, hit the ball and I had absolutely no idea that it was on the other side. None. I couldn't. What I was doing was I was watching the birds, so you could kind of see the draft by watching the birds where they fell and where the other side where the wind kind of pushed them up. And so that's why when you look in the video, I said, "Oh, I thought I saw the ball go down because I'm watching a bird and I'm watching the ball fall." And I was like, I thought I hit it good, but maybe I didn't hit it high enough because you had to hit it super high. You couldn't hit a beeliner. And then it ended up carrying 393 and ended up landing at like 427, 428. And that was pretty cool because for me, that was a sense of immortality. No matter what happens in life, no matter where things go. And now it's actually illegal to attempt it. So I was the first, and I'll be the only person ever in history to do that. So that part's kind of cool. That's a really humbling thing.
I'd say that's pretty cool. I know when I first heard that story from you and I watched the videos, it's to the audience, everyone out there, just please take a look at that video. It's fun, it's inspiring, it's amazing, and you're right that no one could ever take that away from you. So the final closing thoughts. You have literally, like I mentioned, thousands of people who will be tuning in and maybe repeating it. And if there is a Maurice Allen message, that you want to give to the world, and it could be golf, could be personal, could be everything, but you're a hell of a guy, and you have a big influence. You can have a big footprint. So what would you advise all of us? What's that closing, hey, do this?
Man, it's my favorite quote, man. It's the quote I live by. It's a quote from Notorious B.I.G. Stay far from timid, make moves only when your heart's in it. Live the phrase, sky's the limit. That's it. It is that simple.
Man, I am going to put that one right back there. I never heard that before. Say that
Yeah.
again.
So stay far from timid, make moves only when your heart's in it, and live the phrase, sky's the limit.
God, that's awesome. Thank you. I'm glad I asked that question. So, to everyone out there, we're going to close this out. Maurice, you've been terrific, to communicate with, share, and converse with. I have to admit, we've done a lot of podcasts. I don't actually recall the sincerity and depth of some of the things that we just talked about. So I can assure you, I learned a lot, and I'm grateful for that. And I think we all in the world, as you said, we're just people. We're just trying to get through it and do it with hope and peace and some hopefully with love. So with that, Maurice, I'm going to say thank you very, very much. I look forward to planning the Executive Connection Summit with you and Eric and the guys shortly. I'm also working, so if you're listening out there, Sal, I'm talking about Bel Air Country Club and the fog thing, so let's get going on that. So Salvatore, we thank you for your support. Maurice, I'm going to say thank you from the bottom of my heart.
Oh, thanks for having me, man. I like chatting with you. You're a really cool guy. I don't think you're 71, but we'll talk about that another time.
Yeah, I can assure you I am, but thank you for saying that. Appreciate it. So Grant, take us away, buddy.